Hi, Richard. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. Enjoying this beautiful weather and having a great time. Life's good at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. So, what have you been up to lately then?
Well, I've got a couple of bands that I'm in. One is the Skids, and the other one's called Armory Show. And the Armory Show have just released a new album, which I think is quite a good album, and it's had lovely reviews. People seem to like it very much. Um, I've got a book out, which I'm kind of talking about to a lot of people, and just about getting ready to play with the Sex Pistols in Glasgow in about 2 weeks' time. So can't be bad, can it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, going right back to the start, what was life like for you growing up in Scotland?
Well, it was kind of tough because I was part of a big family, very working class. Father was a coal miner, mum worked in the docks. Um, so it was tough. Five of us, five boys, and we only had a two-bedroom house. So can you imagine? But out of that came a great love of music and books. And I had an older brother who was a big influence on me with music, and certainly from that grew a love of literature. So yeah, I was kind of into really interesting music from an early age, I think. So that was the good side, but it was tough. It was a tough beginning, and I don't take anything for granted now when you have experienced that.
What music were you first into?
My brother had a big influence on my taste, and he was into quite avant-garde music like Captain Beefheart, Frank Zappa. But he introduced me to stuff that he thought that I would like. We started with David Bowie, started with an album called Hunky Dory. I was a big fan of a band called the Sensational Alex Harvey Band. Alex was one of the great frontmen. But I think essentially the life changing moment for me was when I heard the first Stooges album, and I discovered somebody called Iggy Pop. And that's when I realized, this was more than music. This was a whole life and a lifestyle. And when punk rock came along when I was a teenager, I think I was already prepared for it, because the kind of music I'd been listening to for most of my life had been the music that influenced all the punks in London. So, Iggy Pop, David Bowie, Lou Reed, MC5, that kind of music. So I was ready for it, and I think in Scotland, I don't think there was that many people ready for it. So I was one of the first. And I think because of that, and because of the way I looked a bit different from everybody else. I think that's how I got the job as a singer in the Skids, because I was probably the first punk. And I was a useless singer, a useless dancer, but I loved it. So maybe my enthusiasm got me through, I think.
Well, you mentioned you were an avid reader. You also used to go to the cinema, like the pictures, and watch movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think this like helped your imagination and your songwriting later on?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. The people that I loved, like I say, Bowie, Iggy, and Lou Reed. If you think about their music, it always had a cinematic quality to it, and the narrative that was in the lyrics suggested something beyond your normal catchy pop song. You think of Walk on the Wild Side. It's like when you listen to that song, it's like a movie unfolding in front of you. And I think most of Low, the album Low by David Bowie, same thing, So there's a cinematic quality in all of this. And for me, Iggy Pop was like somebody who just walked out of the big screen onto the stage. So, yeah, I think the combination of music, strange narratives, different landscapes, even sci-fi landscapes, have always been part of my life, I think. And it makes life an exciting place because reality isn't that great.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. It's like an escapism in it.
Well, I think that's one way to look at it, but I mean, I think I think you can start living in those weird worlds that you create, and that's when you become creative. You start to create a world for yourself, and then you start to work within that world. So with my band, the Skids, I created a certain type of lyric that was very different from what everybody else was writing. I was very lucky that I worked with a guy called Stuart Adamson, who was an amazing guitarist, and he was very commercial, where I think I was a bit more edgy and arty. He gave us the commercial edge, and it was a nice combination. So, we did something quite cool, I think, for a band from nowhere. And similarly with my writing, I mean, I've been writing since I was a kid, so it just gives me space, to be myself and the person that I want to be, not the person I'm often expected to be, and I find that a bit boring. And, when I was kind of getting through my teenage years, I was looking at my brothers and what was happening to them, and they were moving into a very conventional lifestyle, and I didn't really want that. I wanted to continue with this creative impulse, and not for greater glory. I mean, not for, it was never a financial thing. It was just about expressing yourself, and I think I've always done that. Sometimes successfully, and sometimes not very successfully at all. But the idea that I can express myself continues to this day. And you asked me at the beginning what I've been up to. I'm up to a lot. I'm 65 this year, man, and I've been down the gym this morning, get myself nice and fit and strong. I'll do some work on my new book this afternoon. And then I'm out promoting the one that's just come out, as I say, so it's exciting times, I think. And being in a band has also given me an opportunity to get my books directly to an audience, because, it's okay being with a big publisher and getting into Waterstones and, these big bookshops, but that doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to pick your book up. Whereas if you do a gig, say to 1,000 people, then they're going to be interested in the other stuff that you do. So, instead of selling loads of crap on your merch desk, you have some nice books and people pick them up. And, it's a difficult time to be a writer because people have stopped reading, I think. I mean, everyone's just on their phone with their face down, which is kind of depressing. But I've been actively encouraging people to, pick up a book, give it a go, see how you get on. So I do a lot of events where it's just myself, or I sometimes do it with a guitarist. We do some songs. I tell stories from my past, and then I read from the book. And it's really good. People love that kind of thing. It's a very intimate event, and you get up close and personal, and you get to realize that the person who's standing up there talking is as vulnerable as you are, or has gone through. Because sometimes people look at your life and think, oh my God, it's just been one never-ending, wonderful life of success. I mean, trust me, that is not the case. It's been as tough as anybody else's life, with as much failure as success, and as much disaster as things that, that you rejoice in. So I'm very aware that, the kind of world that I live in is quite rarefied, but at the same time, there is a reality to it, So, but again, if you're not focused on the financial side of it, then everything becomes easier, because you're doing it for a different reason. And if success comes, it's a wonderful thing. But if you're doing it primarily just to make money, then you're going to fail. There's no doubt about it. It will fail because it's just too cynical. And I felt that with my group when we started playing again. I said, let's do this because we love it, and we're going to have a great experience. But if it's just about money, we're stuffed. And so I think coming along to see the Skids play live is a good experience, because it's full of different qualities. It can be funny and entertaining, serious, and hopefully moving, as well as nostalgic, of course. And I think a lot of bands from my era, or the genre that I was from, are a bit more cynical. It's about selling you loads of cheap T-shirts and squeezing as much money out of you as you can. And people are getting wise to that anyway now. So I think we're one of the bands that will benefit from that, because we've never done that.
Yeah. Like you say, that was really the outlook of Skids as well, wasn't it? That you didn't do it for money, you just did it for purely enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, initially we were a bunch of kids. You know, when I first auditioned for the Skids, I was 15. So I was only a kid, straight out of school. But it gave me an opportunity, a platform to have a voice. I think I used it quite well. Made some mistakes, of course, along the way, but I was a kid. You know, I mean, looking back on some of the things that I said or some of the clothes that I wore or whatever, you go, my God, what was I thinking? But then you go, well, you were 16, 17. What are you supposed to do, you know? And so, you know, it's kind of, I mean, I look back at it quite with some degree of pride. You know, it was quite an achievement for a kid coming from where I came from the background that I came from, to achieve this kind of platform, to have a voice for your particular style of lyric writing. You know, I didn't write boy meets girl lyrics. If you think of the Skid songs, Into the Valley, Working for the Yankee Dollar, Saints Are Coming, Circus Games, none of those songs are boy meets girl songs. They're all quite abstract and strange, and they've got their own deep meaning, I think, but they're not conventional pop songs as such. And I'm very proud of it. And I think that comes from the influence of the stuff that was big in my life from very early on. Like I say, Lou Reed, David Bowie, Iggy Pop. These people took their lyrics very seriously and delivered something very beautiful.
You mentioned you were still a kid when you started with the Skids. What was that like growing up in the public eye in them years?
Um, well, I mean, of course, when you're a kid, when you're that age, you're kind of fearless because you don't really care what people think of you, especially if you're coming from the punk rock genre. You know, people had an opinion on me. They thought I was a tosser or a pretentious little prick but the people who were my age or in and around my age, they didn't think that. They thought it was pretty cool that this guy came from um, the background that I came from, and I was, you know, even younger than some of them. So I think they're the ones that matter to me. It was very important for me, for example, when the Skids took off, that we did matinees, because a lot of the people my age weren't able to come and see us because we were playing venues that had bars and they weren't allowed in. So what the Skids did from a very, very early stage of our journey was to play at 5 o'clock when people came out of school, say in Sheffield or Leeds or Newcastle or wherever, and we'd do a 5 o'clock gig and then have a break, and then we'd play at 8:30, you know, to an adult audience who could drink alcohol or whatever. And it was exhausting for the other members of the band, but so what? You know, it was important for me to the people who were my age were able to come and see us, and I really cherish that. You know, and we did it a lot. You know, we even had during the Absolute Game tour, we would sometimes arrange with the local school in, say, Brighton or the outskirts of Glasgow or Aberdeen, when we would turn up at lunchtime with the school's permission on the back of a truck with our equipment. And these kids would have seen us on Top of the Pops the night before, but we played at their school playground and at the lunch break. And we would do like 6 songs. And, you know, these were like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids who were like, holy shit. And a lot of those kids are the ones who come to see us now because they never got to see us live because they were even too young to get into some of the venues where we did matinees. So they're the ones that come in great numbers to see us, which is a lovely thing, you know. And they remember the first band they ever saw would be the Skids in their schoolyard, you know, in 1978 or 79, and which is a great thing, you know. It's a really lovely thing that we did that. But it was important to me, as I say, that I was aware they were my age. They were the same as me. You know, we probably came from a similar background, shared similar taste in music and in literature even. So, you know, I made a lot of friends out of that. And it was something I'm immensely proud of in retrospect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You mentioned you had an audition for the Skids. How did the band come about?
Um, well, I guess I was already a punk before punk happened because of the music I was listening to, and I dressed in a very different way, and which got me kicked out of school just because of the way I looked. Um, and I met these guys who were starting a band, and they were uh, obviously the Sex Pistols had just happened in the summer of '76, and they wanted to do something. So they knew I was kind of like the token punk in the area. So I went along to an audition, and famously, the bass player said, "This guy is so bad; he can't dance and he can't sing." But Stuart Adamson said, "Well, that's perfect. He's the man." So I got the job because I was shit. So um, yeah, and it was a great thing, you know. And I had a great friendship with Stuart in the early years of the band. Unfortunately, he's kind of head went in a different direction, and he went off eventually to form a band called Big Country, who were very successful, but they were a much more kind of straightforward rock band, I think, Big Country, you know, with obviously a big Scottish influence in the way the music sounded. But they didn't have an edge, and I think the Skids had an edge, you know, and Big Country never had that. They're pretty bland.
You mentioned Stuart there. You were quite an introvert growing up. Would you say he was like your first best friend, really?
Possibly. I mean, I had a health condition when I was young. I was epileptic, and so you know, when you have that health condition, people tend to steer clear of you, unfortunately. And so it's a bit of a loner, yeah. And but that I got lost in music, you know. So I spend my time. I'd work hard. I took up weekend jobs, doing anything, picking potatoes in the fields, the berry farms up in Perthshire, anything to make money, so I could go and buy music. And you know, you met people through that. So you just hang out in record stores and meet other people who would say, "Oh my God, you like Alex Harvey? I like Alex Harvey," and you got talking. But I think yeah, Stuart and I got very close. Remember, the Skids were very successful very quickly. So you know, we were touring with the Stranglers immediately and playing these big venues with them as their support band. Got very friendly with Hugh Cornwall and Jean Jacques, of course. So they became an important part of that. And then, of course, I was sharing a room with Stuart every night. So, yeah, we became pretty close. It was sad how it ended. I mean, we didn't fall out. He just wanted to do something else. And I think he thought I was a bit crazy. I mean, he always thought I was crazy, but I think he just thought he'd had enough of me.
He must have seen something in you when you had that audition. What do you think makes a good frontman?
Um, that's quite a good question. Well, hopefully there's a bit of humility in this answer, but I think first of all you need to be fearless. You mustn't give a shit about what people think about you, and you remain true to yourself. You know, so I want to go out there. I mean, I move around like a 16-year-old still at my age, and people have taken the piss out of me for the last 40 years about my movement. They call it dancing. I wouldn't be as pompous as to call it dancing, but the way I move around, they think is hilarious. I don't give a shit. That's what the music does to me, and I bounce around. In fact, I make a lot of people who are 30 years younger than me look like old men or old women. So I go for it, and I think that's it. You've got to go for it. And I mean, I was the lyric writer, so the lyrics had to have something serious about them. Although I wrote some idiotically stupid lyrics as well, I might add. But I think the songs that were well known for they're quite serious words about serious subjects. So you know, there's a combination of a lot of things. I think to be a front man, I think you got to be serious about it. You got to be fearless. You don't worry about what anybody thinks about you, but you've also got to have a sense of humor about you yourself, because I think an audience really responds well to you when you take the piss out of yourself. I hate it when I go to a show and the front man is acting like the second coming. It's embarrassing. You go like, for God's sake, man, get a grip of yourself. So a Skids gig, there's a lot of laughs, hopefully, and as I say, I take the music seriously, I take the audience seriously, but I don't take myself that seriously.
Like you said, that's the right way to be, really, isn't it?
Well, it works. I mean, it works, and it's a great feeling being on a stage and you look out and it's a big hall full of people and they're all smiling, if not laughing, and that's a great quality, and it makes you feel that this is worth it. As I say, there's bands from my era who go out and do it, and it's a very cynical exercise. It's just about them going through the motions of playing songs in a very nostalgic way, and then selling as many cheap T-shirts as they can at overpriced prices. So I try and keep clear of that.
Yeah, you've kept like your roots. Like you say, there's a lot of bands now that live off of nostalgia and just like it's just a quick buck in it.
I think so. Listen, I don't run away from nostalgia because we're part of that. That's part of the reason people come to see us. We're part of the heritage trail. Do I wish we weren't? Well, yeah, but that's what we are. We are part of that. But I want the experience to be more than that. So I don't want people just to feel, oh, I went to see the Skids. They played all the songs that I remember. I've seen them now. I don't ever want to see them again because I've done that. What I want people to do is go, my God, these guys are recording new material. They're playing new material. And the frontman really communicates with the audience. He talks to us and makes us laugh, or, it says serious things on the stage. So that I want it to be an experience, and like the book events I do, I want them to be things that people take something away from, not just a book. They take something away. They've got something valuable out of it. You've said something that maybe touches on their own experiences of life and stuff, because I don't live in some ivory tower, I'm living in the real world. My work takes me out of that real world, but then when I'm out of the work, you're back in, reality. And I don't shy away from that, but at the same time, I think I really feel obliged when I do these things that people get something out of it. It's not just me talking about me, because that's just a vomit, so I think it has to be much more than that.
Yeah. Do you know in the early Skids gig, did you have people coming on stage trying to fight?
Unfortunately, we did. Some gigs there was more people on stage than in the audience, and there was a lot of fights. I was a bit of a fighter when I was young, so I didn't mind. But the other bands were not. The other guys in the band were not fighters, and so I was often on my own there. Taking on. I remember we played Wolverhampton one time, and it was a big hall, civic hall. We played, and there must have been 3,000 skinheads there. And some of them were serious trouble. And they all started coming up on the stage. And I ended up fighting them from the stage, but they just kept on coming. It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So there was nights like that. But, that was part of the period we lived in. I actually quite liked skinhead culture, but I hated how it was adopted by football hooligans and British nationalists, right-wing scumbags. So if they ever came along to our gigs, then put them straight, because my politics are the opposite of theirs. That's for sure.
Did you enjoy that? Obviously, not the politics side, but the rough side of it, or did you think it overshadowed the music?
Well, it was part of the period we came from. It was, some of it was rough, and then on the back of us, all these new bands appeared who seemed to accelerate that madness, like Sham 69 or whatever, who had a big skinhead following, and there seemed to be a lot of violence suddenly at the gigs. I got attacked loads of times. I remember I'm big friends with Susie and the Banshees, and I shared the flat with Steve Severin, the bass player. And I remember going to see them in Edinburgh, and I was attacked, and really, it was pretty vicious. So that happened a lot, and even because of the way we dressed when we were kids, people immediately took a dislike towards us, and that could, in much more macho culture, that could become violent, you know. So it was dangerous. But as I say, in the early days, I was a bit of a fighter. I didn't mind it, but later on, I was like, "Come on, you know what we doing?" Fortunately, none of that happens now. I mean, most of the people coming to our gigs are coming in mobility scooters, so there's none of that.
What was it like within the punk scene? I know you like saying all with the stragglers and stuff, but in
Yeah, I
your
mean, I was friends with all of them really. As I say, I shared a flat with Severin, the bass player from Susie and the Banshees, so I was big friends with Susie as well, of course. I was big pals with Steve Jones and Paul Cook from the Pistols, Jean Jacques and Hugh Cornwall from the Stranglers. So I was part of the scene, you know. I mean, I knew everybody, um, and the people that I've just mentioned, I'm still friends with to this day. It's not like, you know, it's all disappeared. I mean, I'm playing with the Pistols in a few weeks' time. Then the week after that, I'm playing with the Stranglers. So see Jean Jacques on the new Armory Show album. Hugh Cornwall wrote one of the songs. So, you know, we're still connected. I spoke to Susie on the phone last Friday. So we're all still connected. Punk was not, in the beginning, was not like sport. It wasn't like you were in competition with each other. You know, you were all friends, and when my friends had success, I loved it. It was a great thing. So people tend to think that we all resented one another and stuff. We didn't. It was we were all pretty much a close knit bunch. I never got on with John Lydon, but who does? You know. So
you performed with the Stragglers when Hugh got arrested, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, we were on tour with them, and Hugh got caught on a drug charge and spent a bit of time in prison. And so I stepped in. Yeah, so I'd do the Skids, and then I would do Hugh, which was amazing as a kid. And in retrospect, I think, how the hell did I do that? But it was pretty amazing. Hugh thought I was rubbish, but there you go. You know, of course he would think that.
So what was it like then playing with them? Did it give you a different like outlook from your own band at the time?
Say that again. But
Not playing with the Stragglers, did it give you a different like perspective from the Skids?
playing with the Stranglers was an amazing thing because they were insanely popular. So we first played with them in Glasgow, a famous venue called the Apollo, and it was huge. It was a huge venue. I think it held 3,000, and they did 3 nights there. They were that big, and every night we played with them, it was sold out. I was too young actually to go on tour with them because Scottish law is different from English law. Then it isn't now. That if you were in the entertainment industry, you had to be 18, and if you were younger, you had to have a legal guardian. And if you hadn't finished your schooling, which I hadn't done, you had to take a teacher. You had to do your lessons if you went on tour. So I was going to have to take a teacher on tour with the Skids, and I was like, "Well, I'm in a punk band. I ain't doing that." And then it transpired that Hugh Cornwall used to teach English and history, so Hugh became my teacher on the road. So I had to go to Hugh's hotel room every night after a show to be taught English, history, and geography. And I can assure you, he taught me many things, but he never taught me anything about English, history, or geography. No, it was a great experience being with the kind of elder statesmen of the punk movement, and we got on great with them, and they were an amazing thing for us to see because they were brilliant at the time. You know, still are, but they were incredible. So we learned a lot about how to perform, you know, and we were tiny little kids in comparison because I think I was 15, maybe 16, and they were like men, you know, they were like 26, 27, which, you know, when you're 16, that's kind of ancient, you know what I mean? It's a different thing. But they were amazing, yeah, big influence.
How do you look back at Scared to Dance? Because you were like 60 when you wrote those songs, weren't you?
Yeah, I think it's quite a good album. It's quite an arty album. It's got a bit of an edge. You know, it's obviously got our biggest hit on it with Into the Valley. But some of the other songs are quite interesting. They're a bit more, a bit more ambitious. They're not just 3.5 minute pop songs. Well, I don't think any of the Skid songs were 3.5 minute pop songs, but we created songs that became good singles. But I think a lot of the albums got a real edge to it. Looking back, so I think it's a really great album. I wish on its anniversary, 40th anniversary, we should have went out and played the whole album again. But at the time, we weren't doing it, so that was a shame. But we have done it with the other albums. We did Days in Europa recently. It was its anniversary, and we played the whole album live, and it was an amazing experience to revisit that album. And later this year, we're doing The Absolute Game. That's the third Skids album. And we're going to play every song on that album live towards the end of the year when we go on tour again. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be quite a thing, so a proper celebration of it. But yeah, Scary Dance is a cracking album. I love the sleeve. The sleeve was a kind of Parisian cafe with a kind of existentialist writer sitting there with his head in his hands. Looks a bit like Stuart Adamson. And then you turn it over and he's gone. And you think, well, my God, is that a kind of prophecy? Because obviously Stuart died. He committed suicide, which was a shock to all of us. Nobody saw that coming.
What's it like these days? Does it still shock you now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I just don't understand what happened. I know he had got very reliant on alcohol in the latter big country years. He never did that during the Skids. None of us were really drinkers. We certainly kept clear of drugs, not interested. So I didn't see that part of him, and I did keep in touch with him, and he seemed fine. And then I heard he was going into rehab. I didn't understand that because I didn't realize there was a problem. But then I saw pictures of him towards the end, and it was pretty grim. He looked quite tragic, and it's just really sad what happened to him in the end.
I've read your autobiography, which is a great book, and you say that you'd be recording and it'd disappear, or it'd disappear for a length of time. Do you think that was related to his mental health as well, then?
I think for sure it was, yeah. I mean, people have asked me, do you think he was going off and secretly drinking? I don't think so, because when he turned up again, his playing was amazing, so I think if he was drinking, his playing would suffer for it. I think he had a lot of issues in his life from his own family story, and there was a bit of darkness there, and he had a very strange relationship with his father, and I think that caused him a lot of problems. So it may have come from that, probably came from that, but the alcohol was the next level. That darkness never left him, and he found something that alleviated that, and which was alcohol. I had it in my second band, the Armory Show, with the great guitarist John McGeoch. He had been fired by Susie and the Banshees for his excessive drinking and drug taking, and he was a mess. And then I started a band with him called the Armory Show, thinking he would get his act together. And he was one of the great guitar players, from Magazine into the Banshees, Visage, and of course after me he joined Pill. But he was a mess. I mean, it was hard for me because, I wasn't doing anything like that. So it was hard to see it happening in front of you. And his playing suffered because of it too, because, when you're not in control of yourself, how can you be in control of your creativity? So yeah, it was pretty grim. So yeah, I have witnessed it, and it's been all around me. It's thankfully, touch wood, for me, it's never been something I've been particularly interested in, like getting wasted and believing in the rock and roll myth and stuff. It's just not for me. But as I say, I love to be creative, but I don't need to be wasted to be creative. I think when you had the health condition I had and still have, uh, you tend to look at life in a very different way. You're just glad you're still here. I think that's probably why I was so fearless as a kid, on stage and stuff, because I didn't really expect to be around for long, because I had this recurring seizures and I was constantly sick. So I really didn't think I was going to be around for long. And I remember when Ian Curtis died, because he had the same health condition as me. I started to worry about it, because I worried if the demons of that might take over me, and the concern about not being around for much longer. But here I am, sitting here in front of you, healthy as can be, still being creative and still having a laugh. So there you go. But I never did any of those things that they did. When you're taking medication that's been prescribed, the last thing on earth you're going to do is take recreational drugs or get wasted with alcohol. It's just never going to happen.
Obviously, it's a horrible condition, but do you see it as like a saviour in a way that you never went down that route?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was pretty shit having been having that health condition, and for the many other people out there in the world who have it, they have my heartfelt sympathies, because it's tough. But I found a way to manage it and deal with it, and I've kept myself physically fit, I think, is the way that I do it. And for my age, I'm a big, strong guy. And it's a really great thing, because when I go on stage now, I can see people going, holy shit, look at him. And I've kept myself fit and strong. And the reason I did that wasn't vanity. It was to keep myself in control of my health condition. And it's worked. Not always, but for the most part, it's worked. But it's kept me clear of all the demons that other people seem to be magnetically drawn to in the rock and roll and creative industries.
You mentioned you never fell out with Stuart, but what was he like as a friend, and what was he like to be in a band? Because he was an unbelievable talent, wasn't
He was incredible. Stuart Adamson was an incredible talent. I mean, his guitar playing was extraordinary. I loved the way he interpreted my lyrics. He loved the poetry of my lyrics, and made these kind of weird mixture of words into songs. It's amazing that he managed to do it. And he was very generous to me. He was very kind. He looked after me because he knew about my health. So he worried about me because he thought I was a bit crazy. I think he understood that I didn't think I was going to be around for long. So I squeezed every moment of excitement and experience out of life as I possibly could. And because maybe by 21 I'd be gone, So, and when you're young, you're not scared of that. Certainly now you're much more concerned, but then I didn't care. So I think that drove him mad, because he just wanted me to calm down and have a more traditional life like he wanted, because he wanted he was with his girlfriend, they got married, they wanted a family, he wanted a mortgage, he wanted a car. He wanted, the trinkets that came with success. I didn't give a shit about any of that. I didn't care. It's funny, some people used to slag me off for always having a book in my pocket. But that's all that mattered to me, was a book. And I've got a room full of my books at home. And I found one of the first books I ever bought, like proper grown-up book, that I used to walk around with in my pocket and go to gigs with it. And it was quite pretentious. You have this The Age of Reason by Jean-Paul Sartre, this existential classic, in your pocket, to say to people, look at me, But I love that, and I've still got that book. I found it the other day, and I was really pleased that I've still got it, because the other things that matter to me, and still are, I buy a book once a week, and I still listen to loads of music. So they're cheap, music and books are still, 10 quid or whatever. I'd rather buy them from bookstores than from Amazon, I might add, support the bookstores. But so, the trinkets of life, like, people seem to get quite attached to, are of no interest to me. Because, so what? What does it mean having the best watch in the world? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
car? Genuinely, who gives a shit? I don't care about any of these things.
Do you know with songwriting? Did you write the Saints Are Coming at John Peel?
Uh, Kind of. When we were recording a song called Sweet Suburbia, I loved to sit and play the piano. I didn't know what I was playing, but I used to love sitting playing it and come up with these little things. And so at the beginning of Saints Cummings, the piano part, so I played that to Stuart, and then he took it into, because it was a kind of hymn for me, a Saints of Coming. I was brought up in the Catholic Church, and I was a big part of my life when I was a kid, up until I was maybe 12 or something, and I really enjoyed it because I loved the music, the sound of the music, and um, the ancient hymns and stuff, which I really love. So a lot of the Skids songs, if you think about them, they've got a anthemic, hymn-like quality, and that's from those days. So I think working with him on something like the Saints of Coming, he understood it immediately because he understood my background. He was from a different background to me, so all the Skids were Protestants apart from me. I was brought up as a Catholic. So when we got into the studio, we mucked around with it. Then we did a John Peel session, and we gave it a go, and that song became. It's probably in more global terms our most famous song because obviously it was covered by U2 and Green Day and went to #1 in every country on the planet. As a charity record. It's an amazing thing to think about that. I wrote the lyrics for Saints of Coming when I was 15 in Dunfermline Library, and literally I get sent a video or a recording by another band every week of another version of it. Some of them are really good, and some of them are really bad. But I always say thank you very much.
What are your favourite memories of your time in the Skids? Like that first part of the Skids?
The original Skids with Stuart Adamson involved. My favourite memories are really playing live. And you can't see it, but where I'm sitting now, there's a photograph from the Hammersmith Odeon in 1980. And I'm flying through the air in one direction, and Stuart Adamson's flying through the air in another direction. And the lights are all behind us. And it's an amazing photograph, and it captures everything that I loved about the Skids: the energy, the passion, the fearlessness about it. It's an amazing photograph by somebody called Virginia Turbot, and it's a thing of beauty, and it captures something that was so important about that band. I don't think we could ever, replicate that because we were young. But what we've managed to do with the reincarnation of the Skids is capture some of that vivacity and energy, for sure, the directness of it, no doubt. But also I've added something else now, a kind of self-deprecatory humour thing, so it's a bit of a show now. So it's very different to how it was then. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. That's my favourite memory, the live performance with me and Stuart. We were the main men, so it was me and him.
With Burning Cities, the album we brought out in 2018, it's got that Skids feel, but it's fresh as well. I think it's one of your strongest albums, that one.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what? Well, first of all, it was produced by Youth from Killing Joke. And it was his idea to record the album, I might add. And what I found really interesting is that I used to hate going to the studio because I found the whole process really boring and it took forever. I just got bored. But with new technology, you can do it really fast. So Youth encouraged me to come to his studio at his house in London and try a couple of songs that he had written in the style of the Skids. So I went down and I was very skeptical. I thought this will never work. And I'd written some words and I'd fitted them to a tune that he'd written. And lo and behold, the young person who was doing the engineering, who was about, I don't know, looked about 14 or something, it was just going bang, 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 bang. And I'd do one take. I go, I'm not a really very good singer. Don't worry about it. Bang, 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 bang. And I was going, what? He said, that's it. That's that one sorted. I was like, what, you've done it? I said, what about layering? He said, I've done it. I've done all that. And they'd play it back to me. And I go, holy shit, this is great. I had so much energy. So ironically, the old analog technology was of no use to me. It made everything so slow and boring. But this new technology captured, because my first goal is always my best goal. After that, they all become crap. And this kid realized that, youth realized that. So they just captured it fast, and it was like boom. And, maybe 4 hours later, you arrive with nothing, and 4 hours later, you've got this song like Kaput or Subotnik, and you're going, holy shit, this has got something really good about it, a bit of energy. And so it was an amazing experience. So, because remember, I hadn't gone near that technology. Why would I? I mean, I've been making movies, I hadn't been making music, and I use musicians to do the soundtracks for me and stuff, but I never really got involved. Let's give him the freedom to get on with it. So I had no idea that technology had moved on the way it had, and basically you could record an album in your bedroom, and it was an extraordinary thing. So it was perfect. It was perfect.
I know you've not got a lot of time, but what were those ventures like after Skids? Because you did like film and TV and even modelling and stuff. What was it like?
Yeah, I guess, with this particular chat we're having, because you've gone into in such detail, there's so much stuff to talk about. And but the movies movies have always been very important to me. And I got a job on television as a movie review person. So I was all the new films coming out, I was talking about them, interviewing people, etc. And then I started to work on some scripts that I was writing. And then I adapted one of my first books, and that was turned into a film, and it was a big success for me. And then I was allowed to make another film, which was based on another one of my books. It was called the film was called Newtown Killers, but the book was called Into the Void. So I started to find this nice way of adapting my own work to screen and using really good actors. And, some of my films I made haven't been as good as I would have liked them to have been. And some have been pretty good, so there's a mixture of good and bad in there. But that's the same with my music, and it's the same with my books. But I'm pretty proud of those films. I make them for very small amounts of money, and they're very ambitious, maybe sometimes too ambitious, and they capture something about the way I see the world. So, and I really like the relationship between my books and movies. So I'm doing my own books and stuff. So I think that's been pretty exciting. The modelling thing you mentioned, I mean, I went through a little lull after the Armory show, because the Armory show, my second band, was a failure and didn't work. The album was great, but nobody seemed to be particularly interested, unfortunately. So I was out doing poetry performances on my own, like reading my own work, sometimes with a musician. And then a photographer who came along, who I had no idea was very famous, said they were doing a campaign for a famous fashion line, and they were looking for somebody a bit more interesting rather than standard kind of beautiful model. Would I be interested? I thought he was trying to pick me up, to be honest with you. I didn't take him seriously. And I told a friend about it, and she said, "Oh my God, he's like one of the most famous photographers in the world." So I called him back and said, "Yeah, okay, let's give it a go." And basically, it was amazing. Suddenly, you would be in all different locations all over the world in very, very beautiful places, getting paid daft amounts of money to wear clothes and just be myself. I wasn't asked to be something that I'm not. And I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, because I got to travel. I got paid a lot of money, which I've never been used to, for doing something quite banal. Um, and on all the downtime, which is mostly downtime, I could just read or write, and I love that. I've always got a notebook with me. I always write by hand. The only kind of consumer item that I've ever been interested in is beautiful fountain pens. I have a nice little collection of them. And then I get tired of them and I give them away as gifts. But, every time I release a new book, I buy myself a new pen. And I've been releasing a lot of books recently. So it's I've got a lot of pens. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm just looking I've got them on a list there. I mean, there's maybe 10 books, so it's been last year I released a book called The Kreuzberg Sonata, which was really a nice success for me. And it was based on my life in Berlin in 1979, 1980 when I lived there. And then I've released another one called Another Dead Soul, which is about the music industry and how vile and disgusting some of the people are in that world. And another one came out a few weeks ago called The Alabama Song, and that's the sequel to the Kreuzberg Sonata. So, I've been at it, really been at it. And amongst releasing books about the Skids, there was a book about Days in Europa, my biography that you mentioned earlier, and there's a book about the Armory Show I released as well. So, I just keep on writing. That's what I like doing the most. When I've got to sadly leave you in a minute and go and pick somebody up from the station, but then I'm going to sit and write for the rest of the day, So that's the thing that I love doing.
No, it's great to see that you're still creative, but just to finish off, what have you got coming up? You mentioned the shows and the book. What else you got coming up?
Well, we've just released a new Armory Show album, which has had an amazing reviews, and it's been quite successful, and they're very proud of that. It's a great album. I'm working on a new book, and getting ready for the Skids summer because this month I play with the Sex Pistols in Glasgow at a big festival, and then a few weeks later I play with the Stranglers at a festival in Warwickshire, and then 2 or 3 other dates, and then we start getting ready for the Absolute Game Tour in the autumn, which I'm very, very excited about. And then amongst all of that, I'm doing book events, obviously coming down to Ruislip to do have a chat there, and many other things. I'm doing Milton Keynes the day after Glasgow, chatting with a guy called John Robb about my new book at the big festival in Milton Keynes. So yeah, no, listen, I keep myself busy, but as I say, the time I enjoy the most is that time in front of a notebook with my pen of choice, writing away, and getting on with it. It's good times, mate. It's good times.
Is there anywhere people can keep up to date with you and the Skids? So I'll leave a link.
Yeah, well, I think it's on the Skids website.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the Skids the skids.com. And yeah, everything's up there. So check it all out.
All right, nice one. I'll leave a link. But thank you for your time. It's been an honour to speak to you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. I wish we could have talked for longer because, you've been really good.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.